Plagne in the French Alps. We are 1,500 metres above sea level in the snow zone on a Sunday morning. Ready for round 5 of the Viessmann FIBT 4-man bobsleigh World Cup. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to snowy Plagne. I'm Martin Haven, and I'm delighted to welcome again to the booth our Olympic women's bobsleigh champion, Kaylee Humphries. Kaylee, you've won 5 out of 5 so far this season. What frame of mind is Alexander Zubkov going to be in? He's won every race this year as well.
Well, if he's anything like me, he's going to go into this race and he's definitely just going to be, you know, focusing on what he's got to do again and just trying to have the best runs he possibly can.
Well, what about this Plagne track? I mean, it's long, 1,500 metres, the second longest that we go to, and there's just corners everywhere. There
is. The corners link definitely one into the other. The top is very, very critical in order for maintaining the speed and anything that you give it at the top. You can't be hitting or skidding at all, especially until you get to corner 6. By corner 6, the track really starts to speed up, really starts to, you know, pick up, get faster, but then you got to maintain through that middle section, and it has to be smooth or you really just waste time and energy, and it makes it hard. There are some flat sections, and yes, the track is long, and so you really just got to give it all right until the very end.
And right to the very end, I mean, it is, you know, we're taking a minute and a second to get down, which is 10, 12 seconds longer than some tracks. I mean, it seems like an eternity till you get to the line.
It definitely does. This track is definitely going to favor a lot of the stronger pilots. The start makes a difference at every single track, especially this one, because there are the flatter sections. But 100%, the stronger the driver, the more capable they're going to be of achieving great results today.
Well, there is a man who holds the start record. Bert Hefti was a brakeman in Martin Annen's 4-man in 2002. It's snowing, but the ice was completely covered all the way down this track, and so we'll have no dramas with the weathers. The start record from 2002, the track record from 1998. Christoph Langen, who now coaches the Germans, holds that. Manuel Mahata, first off the hill, won last year. Thomas Florschutz, 11th, won the 2-man last year and almost didn't make the cut in the 2-man race yesterday. He'll be hoping for some vindication today. And 28 sleds on the entry list means that 8 will not make the second heat. And the question is, will one of our first 3 sleds be among those 8? Yesterday, the first 2 or 3 sleds really suffered. The track was very frosty, and it seemed that they polished it up for their rivals. So the first of 28 sleds in this last pre-Christmas race for the 4-man. Manny Mahata, Gregor Birnbach, Christian Friedrich and Christian Poser are the team. Start record 5.73 is a decade old.
Definitely getting in, down clean, into the start, and really, you know, giving everything you have is going to be critical. It's definitely going to be crucial for this race.
It's a really long, flat start, and it just seems to go on forever. The bobsleigh pilots say that it feels like you're actually pushing the sled uphill because it never drops over the edge and accelerates.
This track definitely, especially at the start, favors a lot of the athletes that are stronger athletes that are used to pushing. Not so much the speed athletes, but definitely the pushing athletes, which...
Big battle between the start monsters. It's a nice looking run from Mahata, but we saw this yesterday from Florschutz, first off the hill. He looked smooth. He just wasn't quick, we found out very quickly. 129 kilometers an hour, 80 miles an hour. He is motoring. Little tap there. That's the only straight on the whole track, apart from the start straight. And 59.47, well, under a minute, but the track record, 57.3, so 2.1 seconds quicker. Christoph Langen can glow in the fact that his record will probably survive yet another year.
There definitely was a very good run by Manu, and, you know, we'll see definitely over the next couple sleds whether the track does speed up or if that just was something that happened yesterday.
Little tap against the wall there, Kaylee. And this is now already going uphill, so any rubs there are really critical.
They definitely are, especially in the straightaways. You always get told, go straight in the straightaways. You don't want to be hitting or rubbing at all, but he definitely kept the sled going in a straight line, which is very important, and no sideways skidding. So he made the best out of a bad situation.
Next up, Russia 2's Alexander Kazyanov. He finished 4th last year, ahead of his teammate Alexander Zubkov. Finished ahead of his teammate Alexander Zubkov in the 2-man yesterday as well. So clearly something about this track just really gels with him. Coach Pierre Luders in the cap in the background. Well, first thing is they'll be trying to outstart their Russia 1 teammates, and 5:91, that's a big getaway. 67.9, a little bit more speed at the start, a little bit more speed carried on down into the run. And Kaylee, when you're driving at the moment, you're trying to do as little as humanly possible because the speed's still quite low until you get out of the corner. We've just seen corner 6.
You definitely are. You're definitely trying to make sure that the sled is running as free as possible. You're steering as little as possible. You're just doing it at the exact point that needs to be done in order to accelerate the sled out of the track. 4-man's a little bit of a different beast than 2-man. You've got a lot more weight and you have to be a lot more accurate because of that weight difference. Kind of like driving, you know, a school bus versus a race car. Not able to save it, but definitely on this track, weight makes a huge difference, and allowing that weight that you've got from the start to push you the rest of the way down, that's key.
Okay, I'm saying now Alexander Kasyanov is not a third of a second better than Manny Mahata in a 4-man.
He did start a 10th, well, 900s faster, so that will make a bit of a difference.
Yes,
for every 10th at the start, you know, times that by 3, general rule of thumb. So roughly, you know.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
It's pretty legit.
10 faster, 3/10 faster. Yeah, maybe.
I'm going to say they drove fairly equally. They both had very, very good runs. The difference was this 10th at the start.
Again, you see all the athletes getting in. You have to wait for the brakeman at the back to drop in pretty much, and then they all drop in 4-3-2. Not looking very comfortable. That's Ilve Kutsin. Next up, Stephen Holcomb, the 4-man Olympic champion. A man with 3 wins already in the 2-man so far this season. Justin Olsen, Steve Langton, and Kurt Tomasevich. And the night train.
A very experienced crew. This crew we should be able to see great things from at the start.
Well, Olsen pushing Corey Butler in the 2-man yesterday, but back on the back of this sled, was rushed to hospital earlier in the week with what was feared to be appendicitis. Turned out not to be, much to his, well, relief, I think. Gave the rest of the crew something to wind him up about the rest of the season. You got rushed to the hospital for win. 700s behind, so very much in touch.
Holcomb's a very experienced pilot. I think we're going to be able to see him, you know, hopefully bring it back towards the end of the track. That's what we saw yesterday with almost all the U.S. sleds. It wasn't until we get to the bottom of the track that you really see that speed and how they drove the middle of the section of this track.
Hasn't got quite as much speed as the Russians. Valna sled just avoids the wall there. And around the final turn to the line, 1400s back, 59.28, so pretty much mid-distance between Kasyanov, the leader, and last year's winner, Manny Mahata. Germany swept the podium last year, and oh boy, would they like to have a result like that this year. They can't find the medals with a torch and a map this year.
They can't. I'm just happy to see that the first couple sleds don't seem to be as such a disadvantage as they did last year. The Russians were about 100th behind Holcomb and his guys here on this push, but they definitely had better speed, so that's where you're able to see that transfer down the track as they got faster and faster.
So the athletes puffing and blowing. Of course, we're at altitude here, which has a big effect on how your body respires. Next up, Canada 2. Great start draw for Chris Spring. Luke Dimitri joins Ben Coakwell and Adam Rozenki in the 4-man sled.
Luke Dimitri on the, I believe, left-hand side, right behind the pilot. He's a new addition this week. Tim Randall is usually on that side of the sled, but had a bit of an issue. Their loading was not clean there. They definitely came out. Spring did not have a hold of the sled, and you just saw it go sideways. The opposite to what we saw yesterday. We saw all the 2-man sleds go left. Chris Spring went right.
As you say, Tim Randall rushed to hospital last week. We wish him a good recovery. I'm sure he'll be back right after the Christmas break. 2900s back in 4th spot at the moment.
Unfortunately, I think we're going to see that continue to fall, just the velocity itself off the start and not being able to maintain that with that skid that we didn't see from the first 3 sleds. These are the little mistakes that you can't make when you're up against the big guns. You know, Holcomb, Kasyanov, Mahata. sometimes it happens, and that's our sport. That's what makes it so exciting.
Well, got to point out, of course, that Chris Spring is still a rookie, has not competed in an entire season. Did race on this track last year in his rookie season, but of course got to Altenburg, and that's where it all came to a juddering halt. So he's still, you know, he missed half a season last year in terms of time on the ice and in terms of fitness training as well. So kind of rebuilding that program and picking up where he left off.
Definitely. He's not going to be, I mean, the run overall, generally an okay run. You can see there he's not very happy with that run, and I know he wasn't happy with yesterday. Just went too early into the corner there. You can see the brakeman and the whole back of that sled lift off. Those are just the little things that add up. A 1/10 of a second here. You can see him, he comes out, got a bit of a skid. He's trying to steer there. As you look, you can see the runner tips moving. He's just trying to straighten out that huge weight of the 4-man, and all those little things that the top guys aren't making that on this track make a big difference.
He is not looking comfortable. Really looking uncomfortable, Chris Spring. Has he just damaged his back there in some way? Well, let's hope not. Kelly Humphries, the Olympic champion and undefeated bobsleigh driver, with me as we watch Lyndon Rush of Canada, yesterday's 2-man gold medalist. What's he going to do today, Kaylee?
I hope the exact same as what he did yesterday. I'm slightly biased, but we'll see. 5:89, great start. Big, huge start from Rush and the boys. They did their job. They got in, they loaded, nice and clean.
Well, yesterday, Jesse Lumsden on the back of the 2-man sled. The first thing he did was start the banter with Stephen Langton, who just outstarted them by 100th in Holcomb's 2-man. I'm going to come and get you tomorrow, he said, and they have outstarted the night train. And of course, you know, as a former brake woman, that's what it's all about. You want those start numbers.
It definitely is, but it's awesome to be able to have, you know, that little bit of friendly rivalry and competition between almost everybody here on the World Cup circuit, and that bit of family.
Eurotech sleds were really posting the big numbers yesterday. He's drifting away the same way that Chris Spring did. Slow speed not as good as Spring's down the bottom either.
No, you can definitely tell, though, it's the little mistakes as he's driving down. That run was not very good at all. He's not going to be happy with it.
Brakes.
Yeah.
Jesse Lumsden looking back at Neville Rucker. Come on, man, on the brakes. Down the bottom, helping with the sleds are the rest of the Canadian bobsled girls, also helping dull commentators get their cars out of holes at the top of the track. Thank you very much for that, girls.
As you can see here, huge oscillation. I think he just missed grabbing that pressure. He's the highest lines, dips down into the lowest. That's taken the long way around the corner that you don't want to do. And as you can see there, he's got the lowest speed. So really didn't pay off. I know Lyndon's not going to be even close to remotely happy with that. Guys did their job at the starts. It was the driving.
Next up, Team Great Britain. This is John Jackson, the driver, Stu Benson, Bruce Tasker, and Ben Simons on the back handles. Late replacement for Andy Matthews this morning. And George. George who? George is their sled. He's a 4-man. Okay, work it out for yourselves. Had a really great run yesterday in the 2-man. Disappointing second heat. They clattered into the wall in turn 1, lost 0.3 of a second. In the rest of the run, lost 400ths more than that. So Jacko is really on fire here this weekend.
And I think they've got a new brakeman on the sled than what they're used to seeing. I believe last night the traditional brakeman got a bit of a cold and a little bit of a flu and seems to be back at the hotel tonight just trying to recover.
5.90, and this is all part of why the GB sleds are among the front at the moment.
Push bar still
out. The brakeman has not noticed that the push bar did not tuck back in. Now he has. And it didn't drag on the wall. Okay, it might have been maybe a couple of hundredths of a second, maybe not even that much. Smooth run so far, though, from Jacko.
Good run, but definitely a huge mistake. I don't know, just new brakeman, bit of nerves, whatever it is, but those push bars were out all the way until corner 3, and that needs to not happen. Aerodynamically, that's critical. That'll just kill your speed and time, and B, you run the risk of it hitting, you know, somewhere the rest of the way down. He seems to be having a great drive so far, though, in the mix with everybody else. He's made the best of it.
Yeah, another solid top 6 run. Oh, a little tap on the wall at the bottom. At the moment, in 3rd place. How is he going to come to the line? Still in 3rd place. This is the way that the GB team is progressing. No wonder P. Gunn is looking happy with life today. Jacko will be pleased with that as well. And one of the great things that is happening now that the team has been working together for a year, Kaylee, is they've got great cohesion. They're really starting to work as a unit like all the best teams do.
They really are, and it's great to see the program up and coming. These guys pushing a 590 even with the brand new brakeman. I mean, that's awesome. As you can see, the push bars stay out. They stay out all the way through the straightaway from 1 into 2, all the way around corner 2. You see one of them go in, the other one stays out until corner 4. Little mistakes, but you know, that's...
Well, again, change of brakeman only this morning because Andy Matthews, well, not to put too fine a point on it, can't go too far from a toilet at the moment. Oskars Melbardis of Latvia, Damas Dreskins, and the rest of the crew, Arvis Vilkanst and Intars Dambis. And if anybody's going to threaten the start record here, it might be this four.
Latvian definitely the strongest starting team on tour. Undisputed, down in 577. Huge start. Huge start. I mean, that's over a 10.5 faster than any other team we've seen so far. Huge start and huge speed, definitely, going into the first couple corners.
Finished 3rd place in Winterberg last weekend. Now, this is almost 300 metres more ice and about 6 more corners than Winterberg. He's already had a couple of taps.
This is what we saw yesterday from him in the 2-man. We just saw him bleed time, but he seems to be holding it a lot better than he did yesterday in the 2-man, which is awesome to see. 4-man definitely is harder to drive. Some people will say it's a little bit easier, but so far he seems to be maintaining the lead that he's given it a lot farther down the track, which was awesome to see. Definitely means his driving skill is improving, getting better. Bit of a skid down that straightaway, not ideal, but again, not hugely detrimental.
Close to the leader, 2100s back into 3rd place. Well, you know, the last half dozen corners caused him, and particularly Kelly, that uphill section. Well, that puts him 200ths of a second in front of John Jackson of Great Britain, in 3rd and 4th respectively. Again, you know, another 12 months of driving. What's this kid going to be able to do?
Yeah, he's definitely the future. As you can see, these guys are huge and they're strong and they're powerful. This is definitely the top starting team, but they load and they're so agile. All 4 of them getting into the tiny little sled. They've got the fastest speed all the way into corner 1, which is huge. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for that speed more than the actual start time. You got to have the load and you got to be able to get that and the other 3 or all 4 of you, the other 3 guys into the sled as fast and as quickly and as powerfully as possible.
Alexander Zubkov of Russia, 4 races this year with the 4-man, 4 wins. How's he going to do here? Oh, Maxim Makrusov on the back, only just getting in, a 5:84 getaway. Now that's in front of our current race leader, his teammate in Russia too, Alexander Kasyanov.
Wasn't the smoothest load, definitely, but had the same speed as the Latvians, which is huge. That, again, like I said, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that speed. That's what's putting you down into the first couple corners. But the start here is tricky, especially for 4 guys cramming themselves into something as small as a bathtub. It's very, very challenging, and you don't have much time to get in.
And if the start dropped away quicker, then they wouldn't be able to run so far, but you run so far here, down to 500ths a second. 1:29.4, exactly the same speed as leader Kasyanov. We're going to have a Russian 1-2 here. Now he's stopped the bleeding, and he will take the lead. No, he won't, maybe. That little skid might just be enough to blunt those 500ths of a lead he's got. He just holds on, 59.07. Russia 1 leads, Russia 2 second.
We're definitely seeing the Russians come up strong, A, in their driving skill. They've got 2 really, really great teams, but B, in their pushing especially. They are getting better and stronger, and although you don't necessarily see it in the time, you're seeing it in the speed, which is the most important thing. He's letting the sled run through here. Not highest lines, not lowest lines. Had a bit of a skid coming through this one section in the straightaway. Controlled it the best that he could. Not the perfect line, but I mean, that's impossible in our sport, so...
He looks pretty happy with that, doesn't he?
He should be.
Yeah, he should be too. Yeah, hard to be happy with leading. Next up then, our rookie in USA 2, Nick Cunningham, Adam Clark, Andy Dreibel and Chris Vogt on the US 2 sled. Spoke to Nick last night after the 2-man race, and he is really enjoying this track here in La Plagne. 5:89. That's another big start, outstarting the night train USA 1 by 100, so the boys will be pretty pleased with that at the bottom. It's the first time on this track for Nick Cunningham. His previous racing has been only on North American tracks. As a result, of course, having to learn very fast. The good news for him is that even the most experienced drivers in the field have only ever been here probably once more in their career than he has. So here, uniquely, he's at the lesser disadvantage. This is a nice, tidy run. 25 hundredths of a second behind. You can see the snow is starting to fall hard outside, but this roof covers the track every inch of the way. So we get perfect ice all day long. Little tap on the straightaway. Kelly, that's just going to rob him of a fraction of speed. Not bad at all.
It is. That was decent run. A few little mistakes here and there. Again, like I said, especially on this track, those little mistakes, although they don't seem huge, those little taps every now and then make up a big difference. Overall, decent run.
Our first time ever here, and of course, you had that last year. Everybody had that last year.
We definitely did. Comes around this corner, corner 18, has a tap, but sets him up, and he goes straight the rest of the straightaway. So sometimes you almost take those taps instead of the big skids. Their start speed was awesome. Definitely one of the higher ones, which is great. So overall, should be happy.
Next up is Max Arndt. Last year, he took the silver medal behind Manny Mahata. This year, he is just having a complete nightmare. Christmas can't come fast enough for Max, I don't think.
.592. Not the strongest start, but definitely Edwin amongst the rest of them. 68.1 kilometers, though. That's the start. That's the top speed we see in the first couple corners. That means those guys, they pushed it, but they pushed it hard and they gave it everything and they loaded really well. So generally, I'd take that any day of the week. That's awesome.
800ths behind at the start, 700ths behind, 300ths of a second behind this so far undefeated Alexander Zubkov. This is a really nice run. 1:28.5, top speed. The Russian was a kilometre an hour faster, though. The FES sled is not going to close on the leader. Now he's drifting away, Kaylee.
He had a really great 18 to 19, though, and we saw Zubkov had a bit of a skid there.
Oh, 1300s.
He's close. He's in the mix, though, so overall, should be happy with that. The guys had a good start, but great velocity and great speed, good load, and Max drove extremely well. That puts him in the hunt with everything. It'll definitely come down to consistency, which Max knows how to do. He knows how to drive, especially on this track.
Better, because he's going to try and beat Captain Consistent Alexander Zubkov. Look here as they come round this long sweeping corner around our commentary position. The speed is not there. They're a kilometre an hour slower than the Russian sleds. And for FES, the sled builders in Berlin, that's a bit of a worry. Alexander Zubkov leads from Alexander Kasyanov. Russia 1-2 after the first 10 of our 28 sleds. Max Arndt, Stephen Holcomb lead the chase of the Russians. We'll be back with more. Stay with us.
Prochain départ dans 2 minutes. Next start in 2 minutes. Commercial break for 2 minutes.
Hey, what? You want to go first? Yeah, we got to go first. 1, 2, yep. Just put it down. Straight. Keep going forward. I'll drop it.
Prochain départ dans 1 minute. In 1 minute, next stop. Se prépare. Get ready for Germany. Thomas Fortschutz, Bonnie Lichner, Kevin Kuske, Andreas Bruno. Au départ, au 22, Bob starts for Germany. La piste est libre. The track is
Welcome
clear.
back to La Plagne. It's 4-man day here on Sunday. This is the 11th of our 28 sleds. Martin Haven and Olympic champion Kaylee Humphries calling the action for you. And Kaylee, Thomas Florschutz yesterday, first off the hill in the two-man race, almost didn't get a second heat. I mean, it was very close indeed.
It was, and it wasn't anything to do with his driving or the starts. It really, he just got a really bad start draw, and going off first sometimes doesn't prove to work. You're kind of paving the way and making the runs for everybody else, and that's what we saw yesterday in the two-man. So happy to see. I mean, starting 11th, not bad, but the ice seems to be holding up essentially well. They're working on it between runs. They're really spritzing. Not much better.
Well, this is Germany 1, fastest starting of the German sleds, 5:88. And this is only his second World Cup race. He didn't go to North America. He raced here in Europe as he recovered from a pre-season injury. Kaylee Humphries, this is a really nice run, just 800s behind our leader, Alexander Zubkov. I wonder if he can turn this into an advantage.
I'm sure he can. If anybody can, it's going to be him. He knows how to drive, and he's definitely looking for a bit of retribution from yesterday. So you know he's going to be gunning for it. You know he's going to be looking for those perfect lines and really trying to push it. Not to say that anybody else isn't, because I know everybody else does on race day, but sometimes when you have that extra little bit of motivation, it pushes you to do unbelievable things. So
Drifting away from the lead, 5th place, 59.29 slide. 2200s behind the leader, 100th behind Stephen Holcomb of the USA.
it is a very, very close race, and it's going to be, I think we're going to, I mean, it'll come down to consistency in the driving as well as the starts for second round.
He is the second place German sled. Max Arndt lies third. Little mistake down at the bottom.
You can see Christoph there, he's not happy. He's so dynamic, and I swear he tries to use the force and drive some of his pilots down the track. I would too if I had track records, 2-man and 4-man. I would do the exact same thing, but you know, he's a perfectionist in his own right, and as he should be.
Russia 3 now, Dmitry Abramovich, with Denis Moishenkov, Dmitry Stepushkin and Nikolai Renkov on the sled. Postulating the other day that apart from Goma Lloyd coaching the women, this is the first time that the Russian men with Pierre Luders have actually had a former athlete as a coach. I wonder what that's doing to their dynamic, to the education of the drivers.
I can tell you it does a lot. Pierre's a great coach. He was my coach for many years, taught me a lot of what I know. And, you know, it's hard to see him coaching another team, but definitely they've got a huge advantage with him. And although you're not necessarily going to see it right away, they've got a year until Sochi, and you're starting to see it. We're starting to see it now. I mean, Russia so far 1-2. We'll see how Russia 3 does, but their program is going to be strong, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in a year with Pierre as a coach.
Normally, all of their advice and information came from the luge program, as Alexander Zubkov himself did. He was a luger before he was a bobsledder. It doesn't always translate. 1900s back again. This could end up being a top 6 run. 127.6, not the greatest speed. His two teammates are both at 129, and that shows perhaps that he's just been rubbing and steering a little more than he needs to on the way down.
Nice straightaway though, 18 to 19. That's probably one of the best ones we've seen so far today. Overall, 59.60.
Well, he's just behind the tie for 9th place at the moment. Lyndon Rush is last at the moment, 12th place behind Dmitry Abramovich. Lyndon 6300ths off the lead. Top 3 covered by 1300ths of a second. Top 6 by 2800ths. It's a big corner 6, Kaylee, and this is so vital for your speed in the rest of the track, really, because it's one of the big acceleration zones.
It definitely is. It's probably one of the only corners that really sets you up for the flat section. 7, 8, 9 Lincoln corners, flat section. Corner 6 is really the only downhill drop you have before that flat section, so you really got to take that speed with you, and you got to make it smooth from 6 into 7 all the way down.
Well, here is our start record holder as a brakeman, Beat Hefti, back in 2002 behind Martin Annen with Almar Schalfenberger and Cedric Grant. Now as a driver, won the 2-man last weekend. Alex Baumann, Thomas Lamparter and Jörg Egger are the crew of Switzerland 1.
I know most of these guys ended up having injuries at the start of the year. That's why we're just seeing them kind of start back on the circuit now and miss the first half for a little bit. So 586 start.
Another good start.
Good, very good start.
And these unique-shaped Citius sleds developed by a high-tech program in Switzerland are really, really quick at top speed. Strange, you know, last year Hefti refused to drive a 4-man at all season long. He just did 2-man. There was a massive ructions in the Swiss program. This year, he's rocking up in 2 and 4-man. I mean, he is his own man. He won't listen to anybody, will he?
No, he definitely won't. But that's what everyone loves about him. So his speeds are huge. He's really driving this, and he's having a great run.
Oh, little tap on the wall, but that's not going to rob him of the lead. 1400s up at the last clock. 210s, yes, 2100s. Wow. Eric Allard, the coach, at home, of course, in his native France. And what a run from Hefti. And again, saw this last weekend on the Swiss 2 sled. No tape over those holes in the front bunks. Is that deliberate, I wonder?
Comes in, goes a little bit high on that corner, but again, nothing major. He's letting the sled run, and that's why he's fast. I mean, he's almost a full kilometer faster than everybody down at the bottom, and that's huge. That's a combination of the start, a combination of the driving. Comes out of here, you see him tap the wall. Again, not ideal, but he just lets the sled go. The tap puts him middle of the straightaway, and it runs straight the rest of the time. Overall, yeah, that's awesome.
Baird Hefti leads the race after a 13th place start draw. So the track here in La Plagne, as we saw yesterday in the 2-man race, in the women's race, keeps giving up the speed to whoever can come and find it. Now can Jürgen Lewacker of Austria dig in deep? Stefan Witthalm at 2 is a new addition to this Austria 1 sled. Matthias Adolf and Sebastian Höfler on the back handles again. Didn't race last weekend, so he's got 2 new men on the crew, I think, in the 4-man this week. 6:12 getaway. Again, not going to really trouble any of the fastest starters, but with lots of corners here, he may be able to put himself in the top 10.
Yeah, he may be able to bring it back. It's hard. I mean, the track is flattened, and the start on any track, I don't care what people say, the start makes a difference, especially now when you've got the Latvians pushing a 577, a 612, just, it's impossible to come back from.
It's hard to say how much 2500ths of a difference makes. You know, it's only a quarter of a second, but that's 3/4 of a second at the bottom without doing anything wrong. 129.0 is very good speed indeed from the Austrian sled.
You can see that, you can tell it's his driving. He knows how to drive almost any track. He's a great pilot. It's really just in the start, and when you're that far behind, it's very difficult to come back.
And the problem is that the sport has kind of left him behind. You know, the speed at the start is not there. He started 14th. In the last 3 corners, he came back to 12th spot, ahead of Canada's Lyndon Rush, who is having an unmitigated nightmare. So he's tied for 12th place with Dmitry Abramovich of Russia.
Definitely went too early into that corner and a big jump in. We're seeing a lot of teams do that, though, especially in 4-man. You can't just place it where you want it like you can in 2-man. You kind of just got to take whatever you've given it and whatever the track's given you and just be able to deal with it. A lot of the top, 4-man drivers aren't necessarily 2-mans, and sometimes it translates, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, next up, Switzerland's Rika Peter, Thomas Ruff, Michael Kehl, and Simon Friedli. And the 4-man, a lot less responsive, but more stable, and that sort of appeals. Some drivers are better in 2, some are better in 4.
And some can do both. The most experienced ones are good in either. You're just a good pilot. But definitely, the 2-man and 4-man are completely different beasts.
All brake handles still out, and still out. Lever.
You can see the brakeman trying to pull it in. The first 3 corners he reached in, trying to pull it in. I don't think it's coming in, and I have a feeling that's going to stay out the whole way down, which is really going to cost him huge. And aerodynamics could be, if that hits anything, that could be a disaster.
The real drama is exactly right. If it hits a wall, then it will stop that side of the sled or be snapped off. Neither of which is a good conclusion.
Definitely not.
Well, we've seen it before when start handles have been left out and it's just broken the mechanism, and then there's a mad panic to somehow try and fix it. 129 kilometers an hour, still got good speed. It's not holding him back.
He's having a really good run. The pilot has no idea it's out.
The only time it hits the wall is after they come through the finish line.
But you can see they're going to have to try and figure out a way to make sure, A, that gets in, B, if it is stuck, or see if it's hit anything on the way down. It's a little bit slightly bent inwards now compared to what it was before.
That was the hit on the wall.
That was the hit on that finish corner, and that push bar could be, they're going to have to do some work, definitely. You can see the brakeman not happy about that at all.
You know, they're little tabs that release it. It should spring back in. It didn't. He tried to haul it back in. It wouldn't come. And after that, after he tried once, he thought, right, I'm going to hang on, or I'm going to get thrown out the back of the sled.
Yeah.
And it is now, having hit the wall at the finish, there's definitely going to be some work for the mechanic to do. Again, that's completely beyond the brakeman's control. Kaylee Humphries, Olympic champion and undefeated bobsled driver so far this season. Alongside me in the booth here is Justin Kripps, your teammate, gets ready to go in Canada 3.
These guys should have a really great start. I mean, they're all football guys. They all come from football, and 589, good start. Puts him in the hunt for sure. We'll see how Justin can do. He seems to be doing, he did well all week in 4-man. See who can drive it. 67.9 kilometers at the start. Not bad, in and among the rest with everybody else, which is awesome.
Yeah, fastest is 68.1, so right up there, just 900s away from the lead. And again, got to say, never driven in Europe before this season, so this is only his second ever European track, his first ever time in France, never mind on a French ice.
It is. This is his 9th run down this track. He had 6 training runs, 2 race runs yesterday, so he's doing amazing so far. Only 2/10 behind. Their push was brilliant. Puts him right in the lead. The guys have done everything they can, and you know, it'll just take a bit of consistency and Justin, A, getting used to the Eurotech sleds, and B, you know, He's been on World Cup before. He knows what it's all about. It's just transferring it now that he's in the driver's position versus, you know, being on a crewman.
Wow, 59.47, top 10 slide. And again, this is not Canada 1, this is not Canada 2. This is rookie driver, essentially, Justin Kripps, Canada 3. Well, did those goggles fog up?
No, for sure they didn't. I didn't see, I was looking at times because, you know, it's great when you've got Canada 3 that's pushing just as fast as Canada 1. And, you know, right now, Canada 3 is our number 1 sled. So.
Ahead of Chris Spring, who's tied for 12th, and Lyndon, 16th place.
Tied for 10th. You know, Kripps will definitely look to move up, hopefully a couple, but so far he's put himself in a great position. The crew's given Kripps that opportunity. It's awesome to see these guys. They're really a great team.
Great 2-man drive yesterday from Edwin van Calker to finish firmly in the top 10 after 5th in the first heat. Let's see what he can do in the 4-man. Arndt van Calker is on the sled at 2, Sibren Jansma at 3, Jeroen Pick on the back at 4. Yes, they both, Edwin van Calker and Esme Campus, confirmed by their National Olympic Organization as having met the criteria to go to the Games in Sochi, so that's one weight off their shoulders.
6:05, not the strongest start, but as we were saying yesterday, Edwin's still nursing that hamstring injury, so it's hard. It's difficult to really push when you know something's not right.
And again, you know, that's what this sort of 2-week break now between here and Altenburg, the Christmas break, is going to mean. Of course, they will be training. They're not just going to be sitting with their feet up, flicking across the TV channels, but it's some rest from having to really strain it hard.
It definitely is. This next couple, well, 10 days for us, if we're going back to North America, it's really just about recovery and getting prepared for the whole 2 months of second half.
Getting rid of your cold.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry to everybody. I sound atrocious.
Don't worry, don't worry. We're pleased to have you here, lame or halt, whatever it is. Decent run again from Edwin van Calker. 12th place at the bottom. He'll look to go a little better than that maybe in the second heat. But again, you know, this is a very, very tight pack. We were perhaps a little surprised yesterday how close everybody was in the 2-man. In the end, the biggest gap in the field after the first heat was 400s between any of the sleds.
You know, definitely close competition, and you're seeing it. It's even closer now in 4-man, which is weird to see on such a long track.
Yeah, absolutely right.
But again, you can see the head of
That's
number
Arnold.
3 and note number 2, Arnold again. It's better than it was when we saw him in Winterberg, but it still needs work.
Still not fitting in well. Bert Hefti, our race leader by 21 hundredths from Alexander Zubkov. Next up, Lamin Dean, who made his second ever World Cup start in the two-man yesterday. And he's joined by Dave Coleman, Keith McLaughlin and John Baines, who's been on the back of Jacko's two-man sled so far in most of the races this season. And the plan, Lamin is not going to Altenburg, but the plan then is for him to come to the rest of the World Cup races this season. So with the men and the women, Team Great Britain bringing on the next generation of drivers as well. 2011 in Eagles, Lamin Dean made his World Cup debut. This is only the second weekend he's been on World Cup since then. 6:01 start.
Decent
for the junior
start.
crew, that is a good getaway.
That is a very good, decent start. 67.5, decent speed going into the top part of the track. The crewmen have done their job. Now it's up to Lamin to see what he can do on the rest of the way down. But we're really seeing the GB crew develop, and they're really putting, you know, a lot of effort into getting, you know, a better and stronger team. And Lamin is the start of this.
Misha O'Neill, who was in the bronze medal position in the Junior Worlds for the women this week in Eagles, she will be joining as a third GB bobsled in the women's competition later in the season. 128.1, not great speed down at the bottom again, little rocky and rolly. But again, you know, we are comparing him against the very best in the world. Heads up there from Dave Coleman. Hadn't quite counted the number of corners, thought they were in the finish straight, and they weren't. 59.76 puts them in 18th place out of 18 sleds. And again, you know, if they can make it into the top 20 out of a field of 28, it's a big step forward.
That's kind of the first step. Making second run in a field that's very challenging is, you know, steps in the right direction. You see him come out of corner 18 here. Push bars are flapping around a little bit. They're really going to want to tighten up the springs, but you see number 2 and the brakeman both pop their heads up.
Yeah.
The coaching staff real upset about that.
Yeah.
Brakeman really needs to know where they're at, because A, aerodynamically, but B, if he would have touched the brakes, that would have been disastrous.
Instant disqualification. Instant disqualification. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's a rookie error, and maybe just feeling a bit tense, but never put your head up until the driver yells brakes. Next up, Simone Battazzo of Italy. William Frulani at 2. Luca Pagin and Francesco Cosca, more regular members of the crew, but the two-man, I think this is his first World Cup start. Little uncomfortable load, 6:07.
6:07, and it took them a long time to get down, and they were already almost all the way through corner 1. They need to tighten that up for sure.
Well, William Frulani, not only a replacement for an injured brakeman at short notice this week, but actually so unwell, he couldn't come to the track earlier in the week for training and to do the headshot. So, yeah, a bit of a pickup crew. And Kaylee, even in a two-man sled, you know from yourself, it takes a while for you and one brakewoman to get a rhythm together, to know what each other's going to do, never mind 4.
It definitely does. In two-man, it's easier. It is, because both of you, you know, individually just have to do your jobs. The cohesiveness and being in a rhythm and understanding timing at the start is critical, because the start is super important. In 4-man, it's that much more. You've got 4 guys, huge, big guys, strong, powerful guys that are trying to get into something the size of a bathtub in less than 6 seconds, and trying to do it cleanly is it's definitely the challenge. And I know a lot of these guys practice, and it makes, you know, that much more challenging when you've got a guy that's sick or injured or not quite all there.
Yeah, if you think of 4 NFL linebackers sprinting over speed down an icy bathroom and then trying to leap into an upturned bathtub, it's about as easy as it gets. Look at that, the brakeman only just getting in. Well, they come down in 17th place. 18th is Lyndon Rush, yesterday's two-man race winner. 19th, Lamin Dean. Those are the guys in the potential drop zone. Well, Vukrat Jenovic, he's going to do really well to get into top 20 here in the Serbian sled. Beginning of the week, he could barely even walk, certainly not run. He's really torn his leg muscle, and they are just desperately trying to get something out of this. barely jogging at 5 or 6 steps. He's got to get in, because otherwise he's just going to have so much injury.
Yeah, it's hard because you don't want to sit in as a pilot and have 3 guys have to push you as extra weight at the same time. You know, you don't want to re-injure yourself or make the injury that you have any worse. So you try and do what you can, but you're really not contributing, and that's also hard to deal with.
As a further slap in the face, the Serbian 2-man got disqualified yesterday for being underweight, and again, that's something that you really just don't want to do. Again, little walking Rolly, and you sort of wonder again, you know, when you've got an injury, if he's just tweaked something getting in, if his calf is spasming or cramping or, you know, crying out in pain, how easy is it to be calm and concentrated?
It's definitely a challenge. At the same time, I think once you get into that sled, you could have broken bones and just about anything done. Oh, big skid there. And you're not going to notice it. It's most of the time when you cross that finish line and you come back to reality and you're not in that concentrated zone that you really feel everything. But for that minute that it takes to get down as a pilot, you're so focused on what you got to do, and A, getting your crewmen down, but B, you know, having good clean runs. All your energy and effort and focus is put on the actual driving and less on anything else that's wrong with your body.
You see again how tenderly Vuk gets out of the sled. It's not much fun having to compete when you're injured.
Had a big pressure there, really high on the exit of corner 6, whips off, goes really late into corner 7, has to turn it right away, but that's a huge mistake, and it definitely cost him a lot of time.
Well, let's hope that the couple of weeks off back home in Belgrade are going to help his recovery. Next up, Ugis Zalims, 20 sleds down, the race is full. Now it is go fast or go home. You've got to bump somebody else out of the race. The Latvian 2-man's had a really good run yesterday. 5.86. Again, Kaylee, not exactly hanging around, is he?
No, definitely not. He's up there with the top guns in the start, and it's great to see.
Tied with Beat Hefti's crew at the start. He's the joint race leader. Now, how much of this speed can he cling on to?
Still a very new pilot. You know, he's going to learn just from experience every single run, every single race. On any track, he's going to continue to learn. So he'll definitely be one to watch out for. He's only 2/10 down at this point, especially on a track where driving can make such a difference. So he's having an awesome run so far. He's really maintaining. And
wow,
should be doing
really
well.
nice run down the straight as well. This is going to be a top 10 run for him. This is only his 3rd year of driving. Sandis Bruce is very pleased with that as well. He should be. 128.1, not the greatest speed at the bottom. So again, showing maybe Kay that as a rookie, he's not got the confidence yet to just allow the sled its head.
No, definitely not. He's probably driving a little bit mechanical, as everybody does in their first, you know, well, in my first 6 years of the sport, really until this year. So everybody learns at different rates, but he's got the start, which is the first part, and as we can see there, he had a really good drive. He's learning, and he'll be up there within the next couple of years for sure.
He's in a 3-way tie for 10th place. Long track, lots of corners, lots of room for error. Apparently nobody seems to have noticed that. And that means that Vuk Radjenovic is not in the race. Lamindina, Great Britain, is now 20th, as David Kupchik, Poland, won. The first of our 2 Polish sleds gets to the start. Didn't make it into the second heat yesterday in the 2-man, whereas young teammate Matthias Luti did. Again, you look at Kupchik and you think, after he steps out of a sled in Sochi, that's probably going to be the last time we see him as a competitor, because, you know, he's getting on, and the young guys, these young bulls like the Latvians, they're just leaving you behind.
They definitely are. I mean, that's always the evolution of a sport, and that's how it should be. You've got the young guys up and coming, and the start, that's where you're seeing start times drop so dramatically. You've got ex-brakemen that are coming back to be pilots, and no matter how good of a pilot you are, you can't make that up when they're beating you by such a large margin. And David Kupchik is one of those people that you just... a bit more old school, and so you'll see him hang around for a bit. Great pilot, awesome guy. You're just going to see him fall farther and farther. So he'll definitely just be looking to get to Sochi, and from there we wish him all the best.
Yeah, maybe head on to coaching and stay in the Polish program. I mean, it's hard to get bobsledding out of your blood when it's been your life for 20-odd years.
It definitely is, and I think that's why you see a lot of the coaching staff. Everyone just kind of rotates around countries, but we're all one big happy family, and we hate to see people go, so we usually just cling on to everybody.
And of course, the other thing is that you, as a sport, you don't want the experienced drivers to leave, because then all the experience comes out of the sport. You know, it vanishes, and you get, you know, the generation that don't have that experience.
Exactly, and that's where you see people such as Pierre Luders now coaching the Russians. You need that experience, and you need to keep it within the sport. It takes way too long to build it up, that to just see it walk out the door is very challenging.
Well, David Kupchik didn't make the race for Poland. What about Dorin Grigore for Romania? Emil Peptea, Bogdan Barikala and Florin Krachuin are on this Romanian sled. The Romanians didn't slide in North America, they were sliding in Europe instead. So they have been racing all season, just not necessarily on your TV screens. Joined the World Cup last week in Winterberg. And again, cracking the top 20 here. It's going to be a big boost for them. Many years ago, longer than even most of our coaches remember, the Romanians were a big force in bobsledding. They've got men and women's sleds, men and women's skeleton programs going as well. It is a bit of a shoestring budget, but again, you know, they're restarting this whole program from the ground up.
I think you're seeing a lot of teams that are really trying to restart programs, and you're going to see a shift and change over the next couple of years of a lot of the teams, and you know, we'll see what happens. Romanians hopefully are up there. It's hard when you don't have the budget and you're facing such large teams with a bigger budget, more teams, more money for equipment and for expenses and for travel, and to be able to do the whole entire circuit. That makes a huge difference. And so, you know, we hope to just keep Romania in the hunt and see him around for many, many more years, and hopefully see him back on top of it.
Absolutely. Well, that was a nice-looking run. No major errors. Again, with a less experienced pilot like Dorin, he'll be just steering a little bit more in all the corners than a Zubkov or a Holcomb, who've got more of a feel for it over the years.
Definitely. We're seeing almost every sled come too early in there, and you really see the four-man guy jump up. He gets lifted out of his seat completely. Again, you're really trying to avoid that. The top guys are really minimizing it, but almost every sled has hit it so far.
It takes really until your mid-30s, historically, for a male bobsleigh driver to really get the very best out of themselves, but we've now got guys in their mid-20s who are right at the top of the pile. Here's Corey Butner, USA 3, Jesse Beckham, Chris Langton and Johnny Quinn. They start 24th place, which means that they are already under pressure to make the race. But of course, Kelly Humphries, this is a mental thing, because the track's in the same place, you're still the same crew, whether you start first or 28th, the ice is probably not going to be that much different. It's just about putting the fact that you're 24th out of your head and doing your normal thing.
It definitely is. I mean, that's what's great about our sport, and where you can get the camaraderie that's awesome between all the teams, because it is individual teams on the track. We don't all go down at the exact same time. Not possible. So you look at each individual person, and it is you and your crew against the track. That's it. And some tracks, such as the Plagne, they've done an awesome job at keeping the ice fair for everybody. Yesterday, the two-man was a bit rough. Conditions, there's not much you can do about it, but generally today what we've seen is very consistent from first all the way down to 24th. It's not ideal, don't get me wrong. There have been 23 sleds that have gone down before you, but is it a deficit? Not such.
A little bit of a disappointing run there for Corey Butler. He won't be impressed with himself for that. Over the 60-second mark, the first man not to crack the 1-minute barrier on a run. 60.16 seconds. And that leaves him, I'm afraid, in 24th spot. No second heat for him, and that's the first time this season. Big, powerful crew, well drilled. Chris Langton struggling a little to get in there, get his leg over. There's Johnny Quinn. A lot of noise down at the bottom here this Sunday morning, and that's always good for the athletes, but Corey, yeah, kicking the ice out of his spikes. Move on. Next up, and this is where the noise is aimed at, I think. Loic Kosteg, France 2, made the cut yesterday. Roman Heinrich, his two-man brakeman, joined by Florent Ribet and Damien Mech. On the back of his France 2 sled. Great to see France with a program again. Coached by Bruno Mijon, who is France's last great bobsled driver. Ooh, handles out, brakeman trying to get them back in. 1, come on, come on, 2.
Gets both of them in, takes a challenge, but like I've said before, the top of this track is extremely flat, and any little movement from any of your guys in the back behind you as a pilot, number 2, 3, or 4, can cause that sled to go into huge skids. So the brakeman, although he wants to just reef him in as fast as possible, is trying to do it as gingerly as possible in order to prevent that sled from going any way that it shouldn't.
Trying to do it without looking as well, to keep his head tucked out of the way, because they're aware, the same as you are, that everything that sticks out behind the frontal profile of the sled is just basically hitting the brakes. On 26.7, not great speed at the bottom. 24th at the start, but behind USA 3 and Corey Buckner at the moment. So I'm afraid he's not going to get a second heat here in La Plagne. He's a member of the La Plagne Bobsleigh Club, local boy. For all his experience on the ice, I'm afraid, he is up against some very strong opposition on this track. So only the fast 20 from the field go through in any race.
You can see there, brakeman really trying to get him in, but he's trying to keep his head tucked, trying not to look. It's not going in. He's just going to wait a split second until he gets back on the straightaway when he can pull it in. That's experience. He knows what to do in the worst case scenario when they don't go in, when you just push the button.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right, he was waiting till the corner was done before he clicked it in, so he tried to induce as little a skid as possible. Well, next up, Maciej Luti starts 26 here. He did make it into the two-man race yesterday in Heat 2, so really good first drive from the young Pole. Let's see if he can make it in at the moment. 20th place, still Lamin Dean of Great Britain. He'd be the man that gets bumped. 19th place, Lyndon Rush, might be safe.
Come on.
Now, if these guys can start down close to 6 seconds, then they've got a real chance. 6:24, though, that might be a little bit too much of an ask.
That definitely is. That's a long way off. 66.6 kilometers at the start. Again, kilometer and a half behind what we've seen the top guys do. That's hard to bring it back.
Well, 2400s behind at the start, or 3800s behind the leader. And again, the rule of thumb is that you'll be 3 times that margin behind, and that puts him more than a second back. And that's not going to do anything to get him into the top 20.
I think at this point, though, he's really just looking for experience. I mean, ideally, he wants to be top 20, wants to be getting more runs, to be able to be, you know, more consistent and to learn as much as possible. But you all got to start somewhere, and so this is a great start for him. Generally, very good, clean run, and they'll just look to improve kind of week to week, and hopefully, you know, by the end of the season, be making top 20.
Well, 26th spot for Poland too, so Maciej Luti and his crew will not get a second slide. That perhaps was to be expected by them.
You can see those push bars. They're really going to need to tighten up those springs or whatever it is, but those side push bars for the crew guys are just flapping around aerodynamically. That's extremely hard, but B, that's a lot of extra movement side to side with that sled that pilot's got to control that shouldn't be there. You want all the movement to be going forward. Almost a collision there.
Yeah, they're too busy looking at the camera and not at the sled behind them. Well, here's our penultimate sled. 31 two-man sleds, 28 four-man sleds. We were trying to subtract from the list who's missing. There's no Dutch two-sled and no Czechs, but we couldn't figure out who else was missing. The Belgians are here, and we've got both French sleds, so 3 of the last 4 are francophone, and they will have a lot of support here. Nico Cerizet, the driver of this Belgian sled, was originally a French bobsled driver, and again, I'm sure he's a lot of friends watching here. gets his heel caught, and Cerise barely gets in. Luckily, not a violent first corner like there would be at Winterberg, which would be a big wreck.
Yeah, no, definitely not a hard first corner, but because it's not hard, any little screw up you make at the top really is amplified. And
well, that's one of the things, isn't it, about simple tracks, is that they're simple to get down, they're really hard to get down fast.
definitely, and any little mistake. And it's hard, I mean, especially for the guys, you're bigger than even the girls, and trying to get in as fast as possible, get that fast load to be able to grab those D-rings in order to be able to drive that first corner. It's definitely a challenge.
Of course, what you want to push is big, broad shoulders and narrow hips and lots of power. What you want to get into the sled is narrow shoulders and narrow hips. So that's, you can't shrink that much.
No, you can't. We saw the brakeman pop his head up again. We've seen quite a few of the teams be able to do that. It is a long straight. You do, at some point, if you're not quite sure, feel like, you know, you have to be on the brakes in 4-man. It's heavy. As we can see, you go far up there, and you don't want those runners to be going or potentially scratching on any type of concrete or rubber.
Again, look, just gets the foot caught. And of course, yeah. And his knees up round his ears as he's trying to get in, gets himself settled.
Although we're big guys, I think sometimes gymnastics would do us all a little bit of good.
Well, you know, they used to suggest that to the Canadian boys. Come on, let's go to ballet class.
They would. I actually think our men would do it. Some of them are.
They'd love it. They're like up for a laugh at anything.
Exactly. We'd make it fun.
20. Okay. 28th and final sled. Thibaut Gauffoy, David Bachelard, Vincent Daniel, Jean-Paul Ricard, and Alexis Flavien. This is France 1. Thibaut Gauffoy was an occasional regular on the World Cup a couple of years ago. Stepped back to get more track time at Europa Cup for more bang for the buck, I guess. Oh, horrible load, 6:29, really not helping them either, like their teammates. They're going to struggle to get in. Look, like Kosteg in the France 2 sled, 6:09 didn't make the race.
He knows this track. He's driven this track plenty of times. You know, having a great run so far. Just hard to come back from a 6:29 start.
Starting off so much slower. He's already halfway down beyond the top 20. He's got to come down within 9/10 of the leader. And he's not going to get even close. He will be 28th of our 28 sleds. Lowest speed through the final speed trap. It's a disappointment for France's #1 on home ice. Again for France too, Loic Kosteg outperforming the theoretical #1 in the team. Thibaut Gauffoy didn't get a second run in the 2-man, not getting a second run in the 4-man either.
And also you see he's not wearing a speed suit. He's different than the rest of his crew. I don't know if he forgot it this morning, which is possible, or if it just, for whatever reason.
Again, might have torn in training or in the last race. Who knows exactly, but he doesn't make the cut, and that means that Lamin Dean, who's been waiting 25 minutes to find out whether he makes it or not, does in 20th place. Beat Hefti does as well. He was the fastest man down the ice. Like Kaylee Humphries alongside me, Alexander Zubkov has not been beaten this season in the 4-man. He might be about to see his streak come to an end. And the French coach of the Swiss team, very happy with that. Well, that was a pretty impressive drive. Look at the biggest gap anywhere in that top 10. Is first to second by a large margin, Kaylee.
It is. Beat Hefti being the only one to get in 58 seconds. Everyone else was 59s or above. Very, very impressive.
And further on down the order, a three-way tie for 10th. We got a tie for 16th. And Lamin Dean of Great Britain, second GB sled in the field. Good news for him. Good news too for John Jackson in the top 10, looking at a second run. Those that do not include Lyndon Rush. He's 19th after the first run. Yesterday's 2-man race winner. So Bert Hefti of Switzerland leads, Russia second, Russia third, Germany fourth, USA fifth. Lots to think about in our second heat. Join Kaylee Humphries and me, Martin Haven, for all the action live. They're on the ice at 10:55 local, some 25 minutes from now. Stay with us wherever you are for more action from Plagne.